Okay. All right. For people joining this live stream, we are talking about curious combination graphs and number theory for version 12.1.
Yes, it is a curious combination.
It's Charles. That's what it is. That's okay. That's good. All right. Let's look at tagged graphs. So I haven't seen this at all. How have I seen this at all? How the tagging is being done?
We've mentioned it in brief in some meeting, but
okay. So I need the 12.1 prototype build. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So in that directed edge.
Directed edge new. Could you go to the
yeah. Okay. Okay.
It's interesting. You have this problem too, where you need to magnify it.
With your swank new 8K display or something, you've avoided that?
Well, 4K, but yes.
No, actually, I don't need to magnify it. I'm doing that partly because of the live stream.
Okay.
Let me see. Does this actually work? This if I do A escape TDE, wow, that's pretty swank. Oops. Tab goes there? How the heck do you make that work?
I think that's how these template boxes work.
Okay, that's very swank. Let me report overscript to the spelling czars. Unless somebody else could do that, but overscript and underscript should be in our spelling dictionary. Okay. All right. So now this. Okay. What is a tagged graph? Charles, are you going to tell me, or am I going to just look for it?
Well, essentially, it's a graph where all edges have a tag.
So they're numbered here in this case, is that right?
Yes.
So why not allow the possibility in tagged graph of giving it a second argument or something, or maybe it's a different argument that is, I mean, that labels, I mean, like for example, in this case, so I don't understand that first usage there.
So the first usage essentially does that automatically for you by assigning an index, I mean, a tag from 1 to some
right,
number.
but it's just like in the case, how do you label I mean, usually if I say graph, by the way, we've got some weird background noise here of something that seems like somebody might be like rolling a cigar or something. I don't know. I have no idea what these things actually are. I have no idea what that even sounds like. So let's even okay. So by the way, does this should absolutely have a thing that says label the vertices in the predictive interface. Don't you agree?
We're getting an attached cell to graphs. that you're going to have a lot of operations that you can do.
Okay. Well,
and a lot of things that you should be able to do there is just that style, these resetting things.
okay, but we could probably quickly add vertex labels here, couldn't we?
Think so.
Charles?
Yes, I can talk to the developer of the predictive interface. So
Fine. Okay. So I'm trying to understand here. What is okay.
The core problem, let me explain
right.
before we get too entangled. Why do we even care about this? Okay. So the problem is this, that if you're going to attach properties, for instance, or annotations onto different edges, you need to be able to pinpoint them. So let's say that you have two parallel edges, you want one to be red and one to be blue. You need to be able to point to one or the other to attach the annotation, in this case, color.
Mm-hmm.
In our original design, when we started to support multigraphs, we knew about this problem, but we didn't think it would be significant. It turned out that it has become significant, and this is a barrier to use. So several users have come back and said, look, I can't get the edges. I can't set the property I need to set, or the annotation I need to set. And so the solution to this is to uniquely tag them.
I understand. So the problem you had previously was you could have 1 arrow 2, 1 arrow 2,
right?
And those edges are the same.
They're the same. You couldn't tell them apart.
Right.
And it would be slightly unpredictable what it does when it applies to all of them, some of them, this and that. Now,
but wouldn't it be nice in terms of the input if you could just say graph, and then you could say something like 1 arrow, 2 arrow, and then the tag, just as an input thing, rather than having to go through all of this. I'm not sure that's the right one, but something like that.
Well, you use arrow for everything. So, I mean, we could have that be the tag meaning that if you have a...
I'm not sure if that's right. I'm just raising that. I think that it's always convenient if there's a very syntactically straightforward way to enter the thing, even if that's not how it stays.
Right.
Okay. All right, but so a tagged graph, I don't quite understand this. I mean, is there a version of graph that has two arguments like this? Yeah, vertices and edges, correct?
They all do.
Right.
But the vertices are usually derived from the edges if you don't give them. You know what I'm saying?
So,
like a graph. Graph
I get it.
is a formal object with vertices and edges. And that's, that means that you can have isolated edges with isolated vertices with no edges.
Yeah, I get it. I understand. What bothers me here is that it would be nice to have, given that this is all about tagging in a graph, a convenient way to specify the tags. Like, for example, in this form here, being able to make that an association with the keys being the tags or something. I don't know.
Right. The key idea of the tag graph by itself, it was that it was automating one of the limitations user complain about. Because usually they don't want to specify the tag, but they expect that it will automatically work. Right. So that was kind of the key idea. For sure, we can add another constructor. Like in this case, we have index tag graph who does that, where you can specify an index where to start or integer type thing. So we can add, more additional constructor similar like that.
Oh, wait a minute, it's missing. Index tagged graph.
Yes.
No, this is crazy. No. Look, you can't have tagged graph and index tagged graph. Names that are almost identical do utterly different things. Right? One of them, this one, is adding tags to a graph, right?
Both are adding tag.
No, this one is not adding tags. This one is taking it, unless what you do is to support the form tagged graph of graph and add tags to it, right?
Which it does, actually.
Well, then
But
you
in
should
this case,
document
if
it.
right,
And then
but
what's the difference between tagged graph and index tagged graph?
so they have two different ways to assign a tag graph. Index tag graph actually tag all edge starting at index 1, right? Where the tag graph actually resolve that ambiguity that you can give a graph with edge fully tagged or partially tagged, but we resolve it automatically for you.
Sorry, say that again.
So you can specify the graph with a list of edges, right?
Yes.
And some of the edge may have some tags, some may not have tags.
Yep.
Right. So what tag graph does is that it resolves that automatically for you and assign those tags. So it is ambiguous to the graph so that you have an index which is unique for each edge.
Okay, it
Without
doesn't say that it
overwriting.
does that. It doesn't say it does that here.
It's in the details. It actually
Okay, but that's wrong. You should put it up here. If the objective is to take a graph and add tags, put it in here. Okay. It doesn't say. Where does it say that? I don't even see it saying that. I don't see it saying that it takes a graph object. Right?
I think that the graph needs to be in the use box.
Yes, it doesn't even mention it anywhere there. So if I take this, you're saying, now how do I tell that it did anything there? Okay, I am totally confused here.
So there are two workflows different here we are trying to provide. So there is the case where most of the user until version 12 now just generate a graph, like you type there, 1 goes to 2, 1 goes to 2. And they assign styling to the graph, and then they just want the graph to work.
Yes.
Right. So to make that work automatically, the best is to tag the graph, to tag edges when necessary to make them unique. Right. But there is also a separate workflow where you want to take a list of edges or your graph and then just automatically assign tag integer.
Okay, listen, I do not believe this name. I don't believe in this name.
Sure.
This is doing something very specific. This is trying to edge tag a graph, right? It's trying to tag the edges of a graph.
Sure.
It's not like annotations, which are doing all kinds of other tagging.
That's right.
It have no relation with annotation.
I know it has no relation. I know. I mean, annotation can be applied to an edge, correct?
Yes.
But this is burning it in by really labeling that edge with a tag, right?
Yes.
I don't like the term tagged graph because what this is really doing is it's edge disambiguating graphs. And based on what I've seen it do here, what it's doing is it's only doing that, in this case at least, it's adding tags for every unique edge, right? So if I were to do this up here, graph A goes to B, have a double edge there, then I'd get that. And if I go down here and I say tag graph of that, then what I would expect is I will get, yeah, AB1, AB2, right?
All right. Yep.
Okay, so what this is doing, I mean, I would have thought that the much more useful constructor, the much more useful thing to put first in the box is adds tags to the edges of a graph to make them unique, right? Which it doesn't say anywhere here. Am I making sense?
Yes.
Okay, it doesn't say it anywhere. I'm not missing it, right? It doesn't say it anywhere.
No, but we say it's typically used to construct a graph where we generate edge tags.
But that's not what it's saying. I mean, if I read that, if I look up here, that's what it's doing here. It's not saying you can take an existing graph and re-tag its edges, right?
Sure. Yeah. In this page, we didn't emphasize that workflow because we think, because I think that workflow is not the most important one. People want it. even though we implemented it and we support
it. So wait a second. So the alternative would be that graph itself could have an option of some kind. I mean, you're imagining that people, just like people can say planar graph or something.
Exactly.
Where they give a graph that happens to be planar. Okay, so the after the fact tag, you definitely should put it in the box up here.
Okay.
Okay. Is this a standard name, tagged graph? Is there a standard name for this concept? An edge tagged object.
I know that there is edge tagged, but in principle, usually people don't give a specific name to the graph which have tags. So, as far as I know.
Okay. Nicola on our live stream is saying that in his PhD thesis, he adopted a graph tagging system based on vertex vectors. Tag's edge has a tag that is represented by the component the two vertices have in common. What if they have the same? I'm confused by that. I don't see how that disambiguates. Sandra on our live stream is pointing out that in the neural net framework, 1 arrow, 2 arrow, 3 is equivalent to 1 arrow, 2 and 2 arrow, 3. But we got a lot of background noise here of something clanking around. Is it possible to fix that? Okay, comments on both of these, please. Comments on this.
Well, for me, that syntax is not that important. We can add it, but it's.
Well, I think we should do something that is consistent with what's done in neural nets, and I don't know whether we can we look at that, please.
Sure.
Who's taking notes here?
I'm taking note.
Okay, can we please get rid of the background noise? Could we please get rid of the background noise? I don't know what that is, but just, we shouldn't need that. And we didn't have anybody assigned to take notes other than Charles here. Okay. Okay, well, I'm not thrilled with the word tagged. Okay. Now, what operations? So can we do all of our operations on these tagged graphs?
Yes.
That's cool. Okay, now what is an index tagged graph?
Just uses a different tagging scheme. There's a globally unique, you have a running index from, however many edges you have, whether they're duplicates or not, you get a unique tag starting.
I understand. So these are two,
there's just two different indexing schemes. We have this thing that it's important in some cases for operations, and programmatically makes it a little bit easier if you have a globally unique index to work on.
Don't we have something which is renames vertices to start from 1? What is that?
Exactly. It's called index graph. Or index graph. I forget which.
Which one is it?
Index graph.
Which is a graph that
renames.
See, what's bothering, I mean, index graph is nicely ambiguous between the noun and the verb here. Index tagged graph is very odd because it says index a tagged graph is one way to read it.
Right, which is sort of what it does.
Well, except it's indexing in a different sense because it's not doing vertex indexing, is it? It's just doing the edge tag indexing.
That's correct.
Okay, let's walk through this again for a minute, okay? Okay, so we also need a term like edge tags, which is, okay, do you really like the term tag for these things?
I think it's decent. We spent some time early on in trying to come up with what are the possible names.
Yeah.
Here, and nothing really materialized.
Okay.
It sort of came back to tag repeatedly. It's like an index. It's like a
Yeah, we got index,
label.
tag, annotation.
Label is bad. Label.
Label is bad because label is something that just hangs off it. It's not integral to the thing itself.
Exactly.
Let's see. Various people on our live stream are suggesting various things here. Nicola is saying, say the edge E is 1.5 goes to 2.5. That's a 2 tag because the common component is the second one. Okay, I called this theory. It's typed graphs. I see. Yeah, that's the word. Okay, various people pointing out various analogies here. Yeah. Marker, ID, and tag, suggests Sander. These are also generic, though. I mean, what this is dealing with multi-edges, right? That's its only life, is dealing with multi-edges. Is that a true statement?
Yes.
So it's just so freaking weird to have something which sounds like it's a big important thing that is relevant to any graph, but it's only relevant to graphs that have multi-edges.
Yes. I mean, I could argue that multigraphs shouldn't exist because everything you can do with multigraphs, you can do with weighted graphs. I mean, it's a particular weighting. And so you could argue that multigraphs are not needed, period.
I mean, it depends on the use, right? I mean, you can use tag, the tag in an edge has a storage, has an annotation. You can use it to emulate a bunch of things. So it depends on how you look at it.
Well, are you in fact imagining?
Because essentially you can build a graph and then you just use that tag, those edge, because I mean the tag has a storage and then you can retrieve that information.
Yeah, but let me point out that this doesn't do that, right? This tagged graph is specifically not doing that because it's labeling, it's just doing it's only doing multi-edge.
Yes, it's a constructor to solve a problem. A user can
I know, but I don't think it's the right thing. If we want to, okay, look, if we're going to do this, we could have vertex, V1, V2, and then if you really want to do it this way, then we need something which is like E1, E2, and then we need the tags T1, T2, et cetera, which probably need to go along with, needs to be more like T1, T2, arrow, or the other way around. I'm not sure which. See what I'm saying? This.
That's why a user cannot just put it directly with an edge. You can just type undirected edge, and then you add the tag.
No. I'm saying if we have this function, right, that is called a tagged graph, we have to be able to explain that you really can put things in here. Not, you can get away with putting things in here, but this is intended for you to put giant data structures in here. You see what I'm saying?
Yes. So a way for someone to specify those tags independently on the right.
Now, I don't know whether this is the right form for doing this. Edge one's arrow. I mean, I think this is probably a form you should support. Maybe you should also support this list of things which are edged, directed edge of, 1, 2 tag. See what I'm saying? I think this begins to look more reasonable given the argument that people will really store things in these tags, as opposed to storing them in the annotations, right? right, Charles?
Yes. Yes.
Because annotations mostly do not survive operations on graphs, correct?
It does actually. That inheritance of property, as we call it at the time.
Okay, well then, in what sense? But in a tagged graph, you really guarantee. Is there a different guarantee for when it survives? Why can't I just use annotations?
You can. I don't understand why. I mean, but you need to uniquely identify with multi-edges. You got to sort of uniquely identify where it's associated to.
Oh, I understand that. I understand, but I'm saying that why can't I wrap one edge with a green annotation, one edge with a red annotation, and I've got a way to distinguish the edges?
Right, but you want operation like if you do cycles and then you get the edge out, you need to know that that edge is the first one instead of second one, right?
What do you mean? I mean, if I annotated one with red and one with green, I get out which.
No, find cycle will return you the edge from 1 to 2, but it doesn't carry that annotation with it.
Okay, so this is exactly what I'm asking you, right? What I was trying to understand is a tag is something which was burnt into that edge. It's part of the edge, right? Whereas
yes.
an annotation is something that might fall off, right?
Yes.
But then you answered that in many operations, we are preserving annotations when we can, but some of the time we can't or don't want to, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I mean, the definition of a tag is something which is really integral to the graph. It never falls off. And I think that's reasonable. And I think that the terms tag and annotation seem sort of okay for expressing those two different concepts. Roger, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that is reasonable.
Okay, but then it's important in terms of documentation that we really document like this form here and whatever form we're going to have with associations or something, so that we emphasize that people can actually put tags in there, right? With a unique, I mean, this should probably say unique integer. Well, no, this is doing something even different, right? So this is saying that what this should say is yields a tag graph in which each edge has a tag associated with it, right?
Yes.
And that tag simply, indexes the edge, right? As opposed to the globally indexed tagged graph, in which, so in this case, Charles, if I'm not mistaken, right? In this case, the tagging is for every the index is for each distinct edge, right? Whereas in the other one, it is for every edge in the graph, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so how are we going to capture that idea? So one of them is that we've already got this notion of an index graph.
It says the notion of parallel edges down there.
Where?
In the notes below the illustrations, 2 paragraphs down. New tags for parallel edges are integers starting at 1. Existing.
Okay, fine, but how do we capture that in a way that anybody can remember what's going on? I mean, so in general.
So I think that the illustrations exactly shows that idea.
Fine.
Just see what I'm saying?
Let's try and capture it in the name of the function. Okay, so this function, if this is tagged graph, how do we need to say edge tagged graph? Can you respond, Charles? I don't really like.
I don't think that we have vertex tagged, even though we
I understand we don't have that, but the point is, okay, what about when we have ports, right? When this thing, I mean, we don't have that notion yet, right? Around an edge, there are 3 ports, and one of them is this edge, another is that edge, another is that edge. right? What's happening with that?
You mean the support or what we do?
Yes.
Introducing the idea of ports. No, there's nothing there right now.
No, not no. Right.
I know there's nothing there right now. I'm trying to avoid the same mistake we made with property, right? Where the thing has, this term tag is extremely general. And I would like to avoid, because I don't understand the relationship between ports and what you're calling tags here. Because there, every one of these edges, right, is going to have an additional index associated with it that says what port of that vertex it's coming out of, right?
Yeah.
Right.
How is that going to relate to this?
I personally don't see any direct relation with tagging.
But there is a relation, because here, what's happening is every independent vertex, every independent edge coming out of that vertex has to have a unique thing. I mean, most likely the way that we're going to do ports is to say that, well, I don't know how we're going to do ports. I really wish we could get rid of the background noise here. Really wish we could, set it up so we don't have that. But in any case, do we have any kind of proto design for ports? We do in a neural network framework, don't we?
Nuts that's worth talking about, I think.
Okay, but have you looked at what the neural net framework does, Charles?
Yes. I mean, for sure, even the base edge essentially will have a vertex and we specified similar to annotation. You will have 3 ports, port 1, port 2, and then we'll attach to them. And essentially, it's depend on the operation. If it's a layout algorithm, then the layout will do the appropriating by matching the edge with the port.
Yes.
But I don't see, that's why I say I don't see directly the relation between the tag, because the tag is attached to the name, as long as the edge is defined uniquely and the port is defined uniquely.
I understand your argument. I'm just concerned with all these names. By the time we have an index tagged ported graph, something is wrong. Right? Because imagine that we might want to take a graph and do the same thing you're doing with tagging here and saying burn its ports in. You get what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay, well, okay. All right. Why is, okay, so when we have an index graph, that is re-indexing the vertices, right?
Yes. I mean, it literally changes the names.
I know. Right. So the question is, how do we capture the concept of? See, I just don't get it. If you say index tagged graph, it's unparsable what that means. Because index graph, somewhat cheatily, means re-index the graph, basically. Right? So can you guys offer some suggestions?
Yeah, I mean, personally, we went down to that road. I mean, with Roger and the design, we discussed about it. Myself, I was thinking about a different name, and well.
Okay, so what other names have we thought about?
I mean, one was essentially flip between, tagged index instead of index graph was tagged index graph, which was one of the proposal. Right? We went down to trying to rename, instead of.
I don't think that's right, because tagged index graph suggests that it's whatever index graph is, it's the tagged version of that, which is the wrong thing. What it really is paren index tagged, close paren graph.
Yes.
Or something.
Maybe like you suggest, maybe we need to be more specific. So if we go with actually saying explicitly edge in this case, maybe that will help, resolve the ambiguity.
Yeah. I mean, I think if we called it an edge-tagged graph, I kind of like that idea because I think that it's, if you see that in a piece of code, it's sort of, you have some fighting chance of understanding what that means.
I don't mind that at all.
Yes, that's
Okay. All right. So then edge index.
But then that comes around to everything. Do you see there on the left, on the names, right?
Edge tag. No, edge tags works fine.
Sure.
Edge tagged graph queue obviously has to be changed. Oh my God, what's the right version of this? So if this is an edge tagged graph, next edge tag. I mean, I guess that is the least incomprehensible of what index edge tagged graph. So that is using index essentially as a verb.
Yeah.
Fine. It's okay with me. It's okay with you guys?
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, let's move on. The wonderful world of annotations. Yeah, so you're going to obsolete the properties stuff, but carry it over, right? It's going to rewrite itself in evaluation to annotation, right?
Yes.
Okay, so this annotation now agrees with every other use of annotation for audio, for this, for that, for the other, right?
Well, so far it's just graph and mesh should actually use that wrapper annotation in the constructor.
Graph and what?
And mesh region and boundary mesh region.
Okay, but doesn't annotation rules is used by other things, right?
Yeah.
But annotation as a wrapper is not yet used by those other things. It will be used in some of the text cases.
Right.
Okay. It's a very motley list of things that uses it. Audio, boundary mesh, graph mesh region. Okay. What on earth is that and why? Okay. Wouldn't have been my very first choice of a example to use the Menga mesh. Okay. So let's just look at how this works. So you're saying annotation rules for element 2.1, which we can't actually see here, right?
Yes.
Can't you give us a simpler example here?
Sure, but one thing to notice is that actually annotation rule is probably the symbol no one will use, right? Because in principle is used for serialization of those annotation, right? Each constructor usually actually, like for graph, you actually use annotation as a wrapper or as a vertex style, but you don't really write annotation rule and then list them.
I understand. Fair enough. Okay, let's look at what annotate does. Oh, that should say known as. What is also known? No, do not ever say something like that. Come on. Why are you saying that? Don't say that. Why would we say that?
Wait a minute.
It's just confusing.
It was still tentative. I mean, I was just going to the possible name.
Just remove it. Remove that, please. Remove that. It's just going to confuse everybody. I don't understand what this is. No, sets the annotation, but it's not like this. It always has a left-hand side, doesn't it?
You can set it yes, but you can set it globally or to the index, right?
Right, but it's always of the form object and then a rule, key arrow value here, basically, right? Right?
Yes.
Okay, so this isn't correct up here, right? Because that doesn't show that it's always of the form key arrow value, correct? It is always of the form key arrow value, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, then please document it like that, okay? Otherwise, nobody's going to understand it, okay? Or is it not true that it's always of the form key arrow value? Charles?
Well, so that come back. Yes, in general, for graph and mesh, it's always key arrow value. The thing is, when we decide to generalize, or as we decided to generalize it for audio and other stuff, right? For example, when you have something loud, what loud mean? Right? Loud doesn't go to true or false, right?
Well, don't call it data. I mean, then call it annotation or something here.
Okay.
Right? Okay, this needs more work. You're going to need to come back. Next time you come back, for goodness sake, don't have background noise. It's driving me absolutely up the wall. Go find a different place to do this call from or something. Okay? All right, let's do a quick look here. We're running out of time and we've got another meeting we have to do here. And Roger, we're going to need to, I don't know exactly when we're going to fit this in, maybe tomorrow. We've got to go back and go over these some more. Okay? Roger?
Yeah.
And by the way, is it possible to have these be links next time to the actual, in 12.1, to the actual?
To the source?
No, not to the source, to the built thing. We must have a built page.
But there won't be anything built. They're futurized.
We should make it so that in the prototype build, that stuff gets built. Why not?
But then we probably better start cleaning up some of this. There's so much.
Well, so long as it has a futurized stripe, why not build it? So long as it, in other words, so long as
we need some other marker that prevents it from being built.
No. I'm saying in the prototype build.
Yeah, I get it. But we've used hundreds of pages. I mean, maybe even thousands, but definitely hundreds of pages that are futurized, that are work products that will, you've seen some of these, Bessel J new, and then it gets to be.
Yeah, but so what? So you build it. I mean, so who cares? It's just a computer. I mean, it only gets built in the prototype build. It does not get built in the main build, obviously. Right?
Yeah.
Don't we already have, I see. We had expression tree in the trees project that Tony is working on, right? What's the relationship between expression graph and expression tree?
It is. I mean, as far as I can tell, it's the same thing.
Okay, so why don't we find out what
actual
happened?
Graph expression.
Okay, I understand, but maybe Tony, I think that was part of the design for the tree system. Okay, we should look at this some more. Let's not rush this, okay? But next time we look at this, can we make sure that Tony is available so that we can tell us what the relationship is to tree graph and so on? Fair? Oh my gosh. What is all this? What is this stuff?
It's a refresh of a number theory functionality. So
the documentation or the content?
Mostly documentation. There's a few things that have gotten updates, like PrimePy and Prime have now new state-of-the-art implementations.
That's cool. But how far do they go?
Charles?
Well, there is no limit. We crossed the boundary of 10 to the 15 we have in earlier version. Currently, the record is known to 10 to the 30. So,
okay, for which for prime of 10 to the 30?
PrimePy.
PrimePy. Okay. Okay. By the way, Sandra on our live stream comments that we already have these things like tagging rules, tag set, tag box. We've used tag for 2 other things already.
Yeah, I mean, so the front end is also using cell, but that cell has very little to do with a cell in a cell complex.
Well, what's the name that we use?
Or a cell in biology. So we still used, the name cell for cells in the notebook. And so, I mean, so be it. I think that's the way English language works.
All right. We need at least another 2 hours with these graph things to get it right. And I mean, with this whole collection of functionality,
there isn't. I mean, I want you to sample some of it, but it's largely sort of higher quality examples, and the goal is to refresh the notes, because the original notes.
Yeah, they were crummy. They were intended for a different purpose.
Yeah, they were an appendix in a book, and they were necessarily quite terse. And for an audience that kind of knew what's there, you can't really assume that necessarily, I think, with her.
No, I agree. Asymptotic equivalent to? No. Asymptotically equal to? This is very weird. No, it's not. Okay. I mean, that's cool. Showing that is really cool. But that's not right. Prime is also known as prime number sequence? I hardly think so.
Yes, it is.
It is. I mean,
yeah, P sub I.
P of n. Yeah, P of n is also known.
Yeah, P sub n.
I know, but that's a little different from saying.
That is prime. That's what prime of n is. It's P sub n.
Is that function, right?
Sequence.
The function.
The sequence that we can't call a sequence, because it's very ill-defined for non-integer arguments.
Yeah, all right. What is this progress reporting thing?
So that's...
So especially for PrimePy, which it can take days and months.
I understand that, but is that the same? No, not a chance. Come on, we've got 2 other ways to do this. We can't introduce a third one here.
I'm happy for it to just say what you want to call it.
And I thought there was actually a plan to unify all those interfaces. We're still waiting for that.
Okay, have you talked to Sushma about that? She's the one who's been dealing with that. I mean, what is this thing called in NetTrain, for example? We don't know. Okay, we're not going to have a different. Okay, can we make sure? Okay, this would have come up, I suppose, when we get. This would have been a mess. Okay, I'm going to go. We need to continue this. We really need another 2 hours. There's a lot of wonderful stuff here. I look forward to seeing it.
And we didn't even start on geometry and graphics yet.
Well, no, we're going to do that right now. That's the meeting we're about to go to.
Oh, we are, okay.
Yes.
We have only been an hour?
Yes, we've only been an hour here.
Oh.
All right. I will see you, Roger, at least. Charles, you're not in the geometry and graphics meeting, are you?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Charles, could you please go somewhere else so we don't have background noise? Okay. Can you do that? Charles?
Yeah, I'm actually on mute, so I'll probably try the conference room. I'm in the office. That's maybe it's the phone.
All right. We'll okay.
It's called training
progress reporting.
Training progress reporting.
Okay, so that was a defensively named thing, so it probably should be unified into progress reporting. So I guess we have to have a meeting. I wish it didn't have to be with me. I guess it can include me to talk about this progress, the progress of progress reporting, and that will involve Sushma and so on. Okay. All right, let's go to our meeting about geometry and graphics. And see you right there. And for people on
Okay.
the live stream, you are encouraged to join us there. See you in a moment.